Hey, it's Sylvan, and this is the Handpan Podcast. Today's episode is one I'm excited to share because it touches on intentional living. If we're blessed enough to have the luxury to decide how we want to live our lives, we can make lifestyle choices, big and small, that'll take us closer to where we want to be. Dan Price is a friend of mine from the Handpan world who has designed his life around simplicity. Through a series of major life decisions, but also minor everyday edits, he now enjoys a life that's free from financial stress and crazy schedules, and that allows him to live simply and to follow his artistic pursuits. In this conversation, you will hear why Dan chose that path and how it has changed his relationship to making art through the handpan. Let's get to it. Hi, Dan. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, Sylvan. Thank you. Appreciate you getting this going again.
My pleasure. Where are you calling from today?
Yeah, I'm in my little 2-acre meadow in Oregon that I've lived in for about 30 years. I just live a real simple life here in a little underground hobbit hole.
Yeah, and that's sort of why I'm asking, because most people know you as the man who lives in the hobbit hole. And I know you live part of the year there, and then you spend part of the rest of the year surfing. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, 29 years. And about 10 years ago, I got tired of the difficult winters and went out and learned how to surf. And now I go away for half the year, the winter months, and just live in my van and surf all winter.
Wow, that's fun. And it's funny because the latest guest that I had on the show was Pierce Flynn, another fellow surfer.
Sure, I know him, yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys ever surfed together?
We tried, and then he took off with another guy down the beach, and I never did get to surf with him, but I think it's going to happen this winter.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Absolutely. So you kind of hinted at it, but there's a lot to your lifestyle. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about sort of what set you on a path to tiny living and how that journey has evolved over these past few, really, decades?
Yeah, when I was an odd little kid. I built forts all the time. I built a cabin when I was 15 years old, and was always in the woods building things. We lived next to a woods, so always wanted to live simply. And then I went out and had a career in news photography and was a regular guy with a mortgage, and went through a divorce and decided when I came back to Oregon that I don't want to even rent. I don't want to own land. I don't want to own a house. And so I went on a quest to find some property that I could put a teepee on, and darn if I didn't find it right almost in the middle of town, but it's on a river, and that was 1990, and started out in a teepee and went through about 5 different structures to find the most ideal little teeny thing that I could live in, and just kept weeding things out and editing my life, and now it's down to practically nothing, and I just really enjoy living that way with no things around. I think the reason I like that is because I can focus really strongly on my art, which was photography, then it was drawing and writing, and then it was surfing, and now it's handpanning, and I can spend all day sitting there playing a handpan if I want to.
Yeah. There is a documentary on YouTube about your journey with the tipi, and then the beach cabin that you built, and now the hobbit hole, which is sort of what most people know you for. It's about a 30-minute long documentary, and it's got over 1 million views. But it's a really good way for people to get to know you a little bit more. I watched it, a couple days ago before our interview today, and I would recommend for folks who are interested to check it out because it's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's just right there on my YouTube channel. My website is moonlightchronicles.com, and there's a YouTube button
Mhm.
right on the website, and that's where you can go look at some of the videos. So, yeah, I think the reason it has so many views is, and I get an email every day from somewhere in the world, someone saying, "Oh my God, I love that video. I wish I could live like you do. You're an inspiration. My life is too busy," and on and on. And it is unusual to live so incredibly simple, but
Mhm.
the joys that I find in living that way are just endless. It's amazing. Like I said, I have simply the one thing that stands out in my mind is it gives you so much more time to do what you want to do rather than going off every day, leaving some house that you're renting or buying,
Mhm.
and to pay for it, you've got to go away to your job every day, and you're gone all day. So I get to stay right here in the meadow and do my thing right here in the meadow. So I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah. And you're obviously very handy. You've built all these, rooms, these structures yourself, and they look really nice, really comfortable, warm. You've got electricity. Um, what's interesting to me is that you got into minimalism and tiny living before it became popular.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I learned how to build back in the day when I got out of high school. I got in construction and learned how to frame houses and was building houses in Sun Valley. And way back then, I got a tip that there was a teepee up a canyon and some girl was living in a teepee.
Hmm.
And this is back in the mid 70s. And I go, really? That's amazing. I got to go see that. So my gal and I jumped in our pickup and found it. We drove up this canyon, and there was this big teepee sitting there, and she wasn't home, but we peeked inside, and we just looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, that's our ultimate goal, to live like
Hmm.
that," because it's all about being free, like I said.
Yeah.
So that was quite a long time ago. That was a big influence.
Hmm. So minimalism is about the concept that less is more. And it's a very intentional lifestyle to sort of minimize the distractions in your life so that you can maximize the things that matter for you. I wonder, how did the handpan make it into your very selective and intentional lifestyle, and why?
Yeah, I actually had a podcast called Sound Journal back in 2011 and 12, and I kind of burned out and quit doing it. But what I was doing was, because I was a news photographer for 10 years, I knew how to interview people
Hmm.
and find stories out in the community. And I was going around sort of making a sound journal of sorts where I interviewed people, surfers, and I was also doing electronic music on a little electronic handheld device
Hmm.
and was really getting into that. Spent a couple of years messing with that thing and pretty much squeaked every sound I could out of it. And it was time to go get the next bigger device for $1,000. And I had remembered my first go around with a handpan in 2010. I actually got a Halo from Kyle and decided after 3 months I couldn't play it, didn't know how to figure it out, and sent it back to him, which is amazing. And then I got into electronic music for 2 years. And when I was getting ready to buy this bigger piece of electronic gear, I just said to myself, I said two things. First of all, electronic music is kind of cool, but it's electronic. I don't know if I really want to do that. Don't I really want to go back and figure out how to play a handpan? And also, the other thing that I was thinking at the same time was the world needs that beautiful sound.
Mm.
That the crazy world that we all live in now really needs handpan sound. It's so calming, and when you're busking, you see how it affects people. So I decided, no, I'm not going to get the electronic device. I'm going to try and get a handpan. And of course, it was really difficult to get one, and in 2014, I was able to get a Zen. So that's how it all started again, and those were the reasons why I got back into it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's kind of crazy that you returned your Halo.
Oh my God, yeah, and it was an Aegean. But I mean, the reason was I was in Hawaii surfing every day, and I mean, I would surf for 6 hours a day. I was just crazy about it. And I'd
Yeah.
come in the evening, and here's this amazing, expensive $1,650, by the way. And I thought, oh my God, I've spent $1,650. Here's this thing, and I was nervous about it, and I couldn't seem to. Because I was a visual artist, I was trying to, when I would come up with a good little pattern, I was trying to draw out on a piece of paper what I had done. And that just did not work. But I was going about it totally the wrong way. And also my arms were all so tired from surfing all day that I remember reaching out for the far notes going, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. It's too hard to reach out to those notes. And I didn't realize this because my arms were so tired from surfing.
That's so funny.
Those are the reasons I sent it back.
Yeah, I understand the feeling about surfing. I used to do surfing in France, and after a day of surfing, you are just wiped out. You're exhausted.
Oh, yeah, it's like you're swimming for hours and hours. It's pretty amazing.
So you got a handpan. Obviously, you still live in essentially what most people will sort of conceptualize as a tiny house. So you have limited space. What's your relationship with the instrument when, our culture sort of entices us to always crave for more handpans, to always get the latest, get the latest iPhone, get the latest handpan?
Sure.
How do you keep that in check in your tiny space?
It's not in check.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to tell you, I wrote down here the instruments that I've had. Now, the reason that I would switch instruments was always because I found a better sounding instrument. That was why.
Yeah.
And the list goes really quickly. Halo, Zen, Orbi-Pan, Sunpan, Oval. I actually got a digital Oval.
Yeah.
A Sierra Sound Sculpture, a Nirvana, a Symphonic Steel, Mackay, Karumi, and now I'm back to Mackay instruments with David. And so no, I haven't been good. I mean, it's a good thing I'm not married because I know the stories about wives getting down on the handpan owners. But I did do this. I've never really lost any money on handpans. I've always made enough money busking to pay for a handpan, and I have always sold a handpan before I got the next one. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I did that. But getting back to the idea of simplicity and not being a consumer, I don't think that applies for me in a way. That concept doesn't apply at all for handpans, because to me, a handpan is such an ethereal, otherworldly thing. I mean, of all the amazing things I've done and all the fun that I've had in my artistic career, photography, drawing and writing, surfing, all those mediums, you have tools. In photography, you have cameras. Well, I always dig down and go for the best and most durable, or just I always looking for the best. And in photography, it was German Leica cameras. So I was walking around with German Leica cameras, some of the most expensive cameras you can get. Surfing, I've kind of gone a different direction where I don't get an expensive surfboard. I get the cheapest one, and they ride just fine, and I can drag it around on the beach and not worry about scratching it and all that. So the whole idea of simplicity and boiling stuff down to its essence, to me, is figuring out how to get the best of the things, and not being a consumer about it.
Right.
Of all the things I've done, the handpan is way, way above spiritually and more meaningful to me than any art form I've ever done. It's just so amazing to sit and play music when people are around and they come up and talk to you and I just would never have believed that I could experience that. It's so special.
Yeah, and you must get a lot of interaction since you're more mobile because of your lifestyle. You travel a lot and you play in a lot of different places.
Oh yeah.
So you introduce a lot of people to the handpan, I would assume.
I do. And you know how it goes when you're busking, about 80% of people don't hear it, but the 20% that do stop and people talk to you. And I have a funny story to tell you real quick of how that all happened, because when I had a handpan land in my lap, I was just like, oh my God, this is the most special thing I've ever encountered. And I instantly felt like I needed to share it with other people. Now, you wouldn't know it, me being a photographer and everything, but I'm really pretty introverted. I had to learn how to be more extroverted, talk to people, but I'm pretty introverted actually. And so when I got the handpan, I thought, oh my God, what now? I have this inner urge to share this beautiful sound, but there's just no way that I would ever be able to play in front of anybody. There's no way. First of all, I'm an idiot on it. I don't play that well. And second of all, I'm just too shy around people. What would they think? And the funny story is that I got the Zen when I was in Bend, Oregon, and there was a big park, huge park, 200 acres or something outside of town. And I went out there, and right off the bat, the first or second day I had it, I wanted other people to listen to it. And so I took it and went up, and this is in the wintertime, not hardly anybody out in the park, and I took it on the farthest trail on the edge of the park, and then I went up behind these rocks, hoping that someone would walk by and hear it, but I was going to be hiding way behind these rocks. That's how shy I was. Now, 6 months later, a year later, I look up and I go, oh my God, I'm on the Huntington Pier and I'm busking, and I've learned how to just focus on the instrument and not be nervous about the people staring at me. And darned if I couldn't figure out how to do it. And now I busk all the time wherever I am. And I play that thing everywhere, by the way. I mean, I could go on for an hour about how I just play a handpan in churches, train stations, everywhere I go. I just try to play it. And sometimes you get kicked out, but I've had some of the most spiritual, and I'm not religious, but some of the most spiritual and special experiences I've had are in churches. Where people come up to me who are in there praying and they go, oh my God, that is an amazing sound. Thank you for playing it, because I just had the best prayer session of my life.
You touch on a lot of really good themes here, from simplicity to just how the handpan helps us to bypass status and bypass fear and to fully own our passion, to be empowered by it. And also this last point, which is spirituality. And for people who are into sports, they make their the sport athletes their idols. We do that with nature, with music, with art. And I think it hints at, this desire, this need in our heart to worship. And I think sometimes it can be misplaced worship. We're focusing on the wrong thing. But we all have that in common. We all search for it. And the handpan gives us, kind of a hint. It points us in the direction of beauty and where does this beauty come from. And,
I really agree. It's such an incredible thing. I mean, and how lucky are we in this day and time in history to be able to be the ones who have found this thing and play it. You think back 1,000, 2,000 years ago, these instruments weren't around. A couple hundred years ago, all the people that came before us, they didn't get to play these things.
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, we are the first generation of people whose lives have been transformed by the handpan.
I was going to say, I made a note here that if I'm having an off day and can't seem to play it, I just totally set it down and I don't think about it again. I come back the next day or the next after that, and it's all wonderful again. I don't attach any negativity to those instruments ever. It's such a special thing to me, and Um, I don't think there's any right way to play it. You know, my mom was a concert pianist and a piano teacher,
Yeah.
and she had a certain way she was taught to play classical piano, and she taught all these kids how to play it that particular way. A handpan. What I tell people if someone sits down next to me when I'm busking and they go, "Oh my God, that's amazing! I want one." I say, "Well, it's touching your heart, dude, and you really should get one first of all because it will change your life." And by the way, how you play it will be different the way I play it, the way Sylvan plays it. Anyone who picks up a handpan and gets serious about it will play it differently through their rhythms and the sounds that they like.
Yeah. And once we get past what it's supposed to be like, the proper way of playing, and once we just start and embrace the creativity and the joy, we actually we get there. Essentially, we not only do we get better, but we enjoy that journey.
Oh, yeah.
And it's clear to me that that is your approach to the instrument. And really, it kind of bleeds into other areas of your life. And I can see that. You alluded to your career as a photographer and an illustrator. And I know you're working on some creative projects around the handpan as well. What are some of those that you could share with us?
Yeah, for a couple gatherings, I got people up against the wall and said, "Hey, let me get your picture here, and I want you to tell me why you love your handpan." And people are like, "Oh." And we did that for several gatherings, and I made an ebook out of it, and I think we're going to put it up on your website there.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 2 gatherings, and there's about 60 people, a lot of makers, a lot of really famous people are in that ebook, and that's fun to share with people.
Yeah, it's a celebration of our handpan community. It's really a wonderful ebook. I browsed through it a couple days ago, and I think you keep updating it. But yes, we will put a link for folks to download the PDF in the show notes of this episode at thehandpanpodcast.com. And I really appreciate you doing this because it's a gift. I know my wife and I are in the ebook. Our picture is there, and it's just sort of a celebration of how rich our community is.
Yeah, and you know what's neat about it being an ebook, an electronic book, rather than something that's printed, you can just constantly add to that thing. In other words, there could be 1,000 people in that thing eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was really, really a fun project. And the next gathering I attend, I'm going to get that going again.
That's wonderful, and it's a really nice, creative, visually beautiful project. It's simple. I think it reflects the simplicity that you've sort of designed your life around, but it's refreshing. And so I encourage that everyone would go check it out on the show notes of this episode. I want to thank you so much for sharing your very unique lifestyle and perspective on simplicity, consumerism, creativity, and art.
Cool. Well, thank you. And you know what I was thinking this morning is we're going to have to get someone to interview you because it seems to me you're one of the old timers, aren't you? Someone's going to have to find out what your story is in the handpan world.
Yeah, I don't know how that'll work out. I guess we'll find out. Thank you, Dan.
You bet. Thank you.
Talk to you again soon.
Okay. See ya.
I hope you found this conversation enriching and helpful. I really enjoyed Dan's honest answer to my question about his relationship to the instrument. With him being a minimalist and all, I was kind of expecting he would only own one handpan and be completely satisfied with that. But as you heard through his answer, Dan is on a quest to maximize the very limited space he has with the best possible handpan he can get, which has led him to swap and sell quite a few instruments over time, which is totally fine. But it was interesting to me because up to this day, I've never parted ways with a handpan I've owned. Every handpan I've ever acquired, I still have. First, there's an emotional connection to the maker. I got to build a relationship with Felix for my Hong, Mark for my Soraz, Joxon for my Boreal, Sean for my Iskra. Those were meaningful purchases, and these instruments have almost become sentimental items. Second, I have composed songs on each of these instruments, which have sort of become the soundtrack of my life for the past 12 years or so. And I could not play those songs any longer if I were to swap or sell that instrument. That being said, I do realize that holding on to things, even handpans, ultimately doesn't work either. I know our lives on Earth are finite and that at some point or another, we just gotta let go. So I wonder if letting go as a choice can be beneficial. At gatherings sometimes you hear the quote-unquote desert island discussion. It goes like this. If you were stranded on a desert island with only one handpan, what would it be? Maybe a relevant sub-question for our day is, would one be enough? Let me know what you think on our Facebook group called the Handpan Podcast Community. As always, it's a place where you can share your video and audio recordings, your thoughts and photos about your own creative journey. There is no competition or ego trip. It's just a place for us to connect and bounce ideas about the many themes we touch on here. You can also visit thehandpanpodcast.com and you will find my Just a Thought series where I document ideas for future episodes, and you will find the official merch for the Handpan Podcast. There are 3 awesome designs made by my friend Jeff Kane, who's a graphic designer and illustrator at my church. The most popular design is a wacky illustration of an alien playing the handpan. It's totally whimsical, and I personally love it. It's available on t-shirts, hoodies, tote bags, stickers, and yes, even shower curtains. Thanks everyone who already ordered one. Your purchase helps support this ad-free podcast. That's it for this episode of the Handpan Podcast. Thanks for listening, and talk to you in the next one.